Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz is in Canada, aiming to deepen security ties, expand defence industrial cooperation and advance a strategic partnership. Talks focus on NATO, Ukraine and joint projects, with Canada set to headline Poland's major defence exhibition next year. This comes as the United States plans to halve its deep strike capability in Europe. Joining us to discuss this is Tomasz Lukaszuk. He's a former member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta. Mr. Lukaszuk, welcome to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a military source close to the matter has informed TVP World about this American plan to halve its deep strike capability that is currently located in Europe. What does that tell us about the reliability of the United States in military matters, in defense of Europe?
Well, if your sources are accurate, this is a very problematic development, obviously for the defense of all of Europe, but frankly for the peace in the world. This is fitting a pattern. That's why I am not doubting that the information that you're garnering is accurate, because the United States has just withdrawn from the Canada-USA Board of Defense, which was just put together after the conclusion of World War II. And even though this board was largely non-functioning agent, very symbolic, the withdrawal of the United States from it sends a message that the United States is willing to weaponize economic trade and negotiations. This comes on the heels of us negotiating CUSMA, free trade agreement with the United States. So using military defense to achieve economic goals seems to be the pattern that we are seeing from Washington.
Right. Well, assuming, and we believe this to be true, that this is actually going ahead, what impact do you expect this to have on Europe's ability to defend itself against aggressors such as, of course, Russia?
Well, I think the answer is in the fact that Polish Minister of Defense Kosiniak-Kamysz is in Ottawa right now. We, as much as we want to rebuild our relationship with the United States, they are a valued member of NATO, and in Canada of NORAD, protecting our Arctic. In North America, we have to accept the fact that the United States has become somewhat of an unreliable partner right now, and that means we have to forge closer military and economic ties between Canada and their European Union and United Kingdom. So as we have seen, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Carney, has been visiting Europe and UK more often than any previous Prime Minister of Canada has. And that is not only motivated by economic considerations, but to a large extent by codependence on military support.
Yes, well, I'd like to talk about the relationship between the EU and Canada. Prime Minister Carney did visit Poland as well, and Prime Minister Tusk said that there was going to be a strategic relationship between Poland and Canada. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, there are a lot of platforms on which Canada can further collaborate, not only with Poland, but with all of the European Union. Canada has the potential of providing natural resources that are critical to rearming Europe to the level that it has to rearm itself to feel secure next to Russia, but also our collaborative military effort could be heightened beyond that of NATO, striking alliances that are parallel but outside of NATO structures is something that I think we should be aspiring towards. So there is a parallelism between military buildup and economic considerations. Also, it is very important for Europe to become independent of Russian energy, and here again comes in Canada, which could be a reliable source for energy. for all of Europe and for UK. So there are many relationships that could be developed, which could benefit both of our continents, with being Canada and European Union economically, but also strengthen our defense capabilities.
Right. Well, talking about defence, Canada is the first country outside the EU which has been given access to safe funding, which is to be spent on defence materiel. Does that surprise you that this arrangement has been arrived at?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. Canada is a natural ally for European Union. There is a misunderstanding often in Europe that Canada is much like United States. To the contrary, when you look at the values-based proposition, Canada is much closer to European Union than it is to United States. And now, considering the fact that we live in a rather unpredictable relationship with the United States, it is only natural that we would be seeking out stronger ties with the European Union. And that doesn't necessarily mean joining European Union, although many of us, I imagine, as Canadians would be very much open to it. But accessing funding from European Union for rearmament of Canada and also assisting European Union with our capability is the right thing to do. Many of us never thought that we would be in this position, but this is where we find ourselves, and we see each other as very compatible partners.
Well, you mentioned joining the European Union. A recent poll shows that 25% of Canadians are in favour, with a similar number actually wanting to know more before they reach a decision. So it may not be entirely out of the question at the moment. Moving forward to Defence Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz's visit to Ottawa, in concrete terms, what do you expect the outcomes to be of this visit?
I imagine Canadian military presence has been continuous in Poland. Our Canadian soldiers have been training Ukrainian forces in Poland. I imagine sending a larger contingent of Canadian forces to Europe, and particularly to Poland. It is something under consideration. But also, we have to think of ourselves as a single unit between Canada and European Union. So our strategy of reinforcing our military capability has to be better coordinated, because there is limited resources available both to Canada and Europe from our taxpayers. So we have to coordinate our effort to make sure that both Canada and European Union strengthen our military capabilities in a coordinated manner, so that we can complement each other and not duplicate each other. And I assume that a lot of the conversations will be focused around that.
Understood. Now, you mentioned the Canadian soldiers in Poland who are training Ukrainian soldiers. What is Canada's interest in Ukraine? I mean, they are geographically quite far apart. Why is Canada so interested?
For two principal reasons. One has to do with values. Our fundamental values in Canada object to any unauthorized invasion of a sovereign country. Russia has illegally invaded a sovereign country that is allied with Canada, and we simply object to that from a value-based proposition and from international law and order. But also, Canada has very strong emotional ties to Ukraine as much as it does to Poland. We have very large diasporas of Ukrainians living in Canada and Poles, like myself. And that creates a natural relationship between Canada and Ukraine. But I cannot overstate the fact that we as Canadians believe in the rule of law and international order, and any violation of such is something that really shakes us up to the core of who we are as Canadians.
Understood. Now, Canada is actually becoming the lead partner at next year's International Defence Industry Exhibition, which is being held in Kielce, Poland. What does this signify to you?
Well, first of all, I think it's more than symbolic that it is in Kielce. It is very important that we bring attention to Poland. Poland is a valued member of NATO, a very strong member of NATO, but also on the eastern flank, bordering Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. So that is very important that these types of events happen in Poland. Canada has to be a major player in that exhibition because we have untapped capabilities in this country to manufacture equipment. Prime Minister Carney has taken on a challenge of restructuring Canadian economy into self-reliance and lessening our dependence on the United States. We are now considering not only manufacturing weapons and arms in Canada to a larger extent than we have since World War II. But also we're looking at purchasing military equipment, not exclusively from the United States. And our reconsideration of the purchase of F-35 is a prime example of that. So there is a lot of capability that Canada can offer to the defense of Europe and likewise.
Understood. Now, in the last minute or so that we have left, Mr. Lukaszuk, cybersecurity is clearly foremost in many countries' minds, considering it forms part of Russia's hybrid attacks on Europe and other countries. How much is Canada investing in defending against that, and is that another area of cooperation between Europe and Poland and Canada?
Most certainly, we have to rely on each other's know-how. In this, again, there is no point for Europe and for Canada to replicate the effort if we can coordinate it and save the resources from both taxpayers in Europe and in Canada. Canada right now is investing heavily into server farms and into strengthening our legal legislative structures governing the cyberspace. I think we have a lot to learn from Europe on that particular front. As in my opinion, Europe is a leader on that platform.
Understood. Mr. Lukaszuk, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. But as always, thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a great day.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Too.
Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.